Ever find yourself scratching your head, wondering how that kid who could barely spell their own name in school is now posting vacation photos from the Maldives on Instagram? Meanwhile, the straight-A honor student you sat next to is tweeting about their crippling debt? It's one of those things that genuinely makes you question reality. Like, wait, isn't merit supposed to mean something? Shouldn't raw brain power translate directly into dollar signs? Here's what nobody tells you. The universe doesn't play by those rules. When it comes to accumulating actual wealth, intelligence operates on a completely different frequency than we've been taught to believe. I'm Tim, and I've spent an unhealthy amount of time dissecting the psychology behind who builds fortunes and who doesn't. What I'm about to share might flip your entire understanding of success on its head. Ready for it? Your intelligence could be the exact thing sabotaging your financial future. I realize that sounds completely backwards, but hear me out. The data behind this is absolutely fascinating. Before we get into the details, go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in learning how to build real wealth without needing to be the brightest bulb in the box. Hit that like button too, because honestly, by the time we're done here, you might find yourself relieved. Let me hit you with some research that'll make your brain do backflips. A team of Swedish scientists tracked close to 60,000 men who'd all taken cognitive assessments during their mandatory military service. This wasn't some small-scale survey either. We're talking about a massive longitudinal study that followed their actual income trajectories for over a decade, pulling real numbers straight from government tax databases. No self-reporting, no estimates, just pure, verifiable financial data. Initially, the findings looked predictable enough. The patterns seemed to confirm everything society had taught us. Sharper minds correlated with fatter wallets. Those who scored higher on the tests brought home bigger paychecks than those in the middle, who in turn out-earned those at the bottom. The universe appeared orderly and fair. But then something bizarre emerged around the $55,000 threshold. Once participants crossed that earnings line, the relationship between cognitive ability and income essentially dissolved. And here's the real kicker. The top 1% of income earners actually tested slightly below their high-earning counterparts in raw intelligence scores. Read that again because it's critical. The wealthiest individuals in the study weren't the most intellectually gifted. They were, statistically speaking, a notch less intelligent. Now, don't go celebrating mediocre SAT scores just yet. These high earners aren't incompetent by any stretch. They're still extremely capable individuals. But what this research reveals is profound. Beyond a certain achievement level, pure intellectual horsepower stops being the variable that determines your financial destiny. Different characteristics begin to dominate. And fascinatingly, these are often the exact same qualities that people with ordinary intelligence have been forced to cultivate their entire lives just to keep up. Stupid grit. This brings us to the first major reason why people who aren't conventionally brilliant sometimes accumulate wealth at lightning speed compared to everyone else. They possess what researchers call stupid grit. And no, I didn't invent that term to feel better about my own questionable decisions. It's legitimate psychological terminology. Carolyn Miller, who's done extensive work on this concept, describes stupid grit as the relentless pursuit of objectives regardless of consequences, even when that pursuit could damage yourself or others. Consider Mount Everest climbers as a prime example. When they're approaching the peak, they're physically depleted, their oxygen supplies are dwindling, and genuine peril surrounds them. Logic would dictate turning back immediately for survival's sake. Instead, many push upward, consumed by what mountaineers call summit fever, a fixation that has claimed numerous lives. Miller distinguishes this from what she calls authentic grit, the sustained passion and determination to chase meaningful long-term objectives in a way that's actually sustainable. Obviously, authentic grit is the ideal we should pursue. But here's the uncomfortable reality most of us refuse to acknowledge. We quit far too prematurely. That's precisely where a measured dose of stupid grit can actually rescue you from yourself. Take investing as a case study. When I first began putting money into markets, my contributions were laughably small, a couple $100s here and there. The whole endeavor felt pointless. My account balance barely fluctuated, and I constantly questioned whether any of this mattered. The temptation to abandon the strategy surfaced repeatedly.
Then I finally forced myself to run the actual calculations. Those minuscule, seemingly insignificant contributions, when maintained consistently over time and allowed to compound, transformed into something genuinely staggering. The initial years feel excruciating because the growth curve is exponential, and most people bail out long before they witness the real magic happen.
This is where not overanalyzing becomes a peculiar competitive advantage. Intelligent people examine their preliminary results, conclude the approach isn't delivering, and pivot to something new with alarming frequency. Meanwhile, individuals with stupid grit just keep showing up. They keep executing the plan, and that dogged persistence eventually generates extraordinary returns.
In practical terms, this might mean submitting applications to your dream company month after month until someone finally notices you. It could be continuing to automatically invest in index funds even when every financial media outlet is prophesying market apocalypse. Perhaps it's volunteering for the unglamorous, unrecognized assignments at work until leadership simply cannot overlook what you're contributing. Look, authentic grit should absolutely be what we aim for, but when the stakes aren't catastrophic, sometimes a touch of stupid grit is exactly what propels you past the finish line while everyone else remains frozen at the starting blocks, endlessly refining their approach. Action over analysis. The second reason ordinary people frequently outpace geniuses in wealth accumulation is their willingness to dive straight into opportunities without drowning in analysis first. I learned this lesson through watching someone I know, a guy who definitely wouldn't win any academic awards. He barely scraped through high school, had an unremarkable college run, and spent years hopping between stable but forgettable jobs. Then, one afternoon, completely out of left field, he announces he's quitting his position to launch a lawn care operation. Not some sophisticated landscape architecture firm, literally just lawn maintenance. Mowing grass, trimming shrubs, basic yard work. My immediate reaction? This guy's completely lost it. He had no business blueprint, his savings account was almost empty, and he'd never managed so much as a lemonade stand. But here's what he possessed that I completely lacked: the capacity to execute without second-guessing every conceivable outcome. While I was still comparing business entity structures and evaluating insurance providers online, he was already outside cutting lawns and cashing checks. 6 months down the line, he was turning away clients because he couldn't keep up with demand and was bringing people onto his payroll. Meanwhile, I burned 2 full years planning a side venture that never materialized because I was obsessed with achieving perfection before launch. I had elaborate spreadsheets, comprehensive market research, competitive analysis documents, and meticulously crafted 5-year financial projections. What I didn't have was a single person actually paying me money, because I was perpetually stuck in preparation mode while he was out there actually doing the work. This dynamic repeats itself constantly, and it's genuinely maddening when you think about it. Intelligent people get trapped in what I call analysis paralysis. They need to investigate every variable, comprehend every potential risk, and construct a flawless roadmap before taking even one step forward. Sounds rational, right? But while they're busy architecting the perfect strategy, less cerebral folks are already in the arena making blunders, extracting lessons, and constructing something tangible. Now, I'm not advocating for reckless decision-making or ignoring glaring warning signs. There's an enormous distinction between being prudent and being immobilized by your need for absolute certainty. The reality is you'll never possess every piece of information you think you require. Eventually, you simply have to jump and solve problems in real time. Emotional intelligence. The third reason people with ordinary intelligence often build fortunes faster is something that might catch you off guard. They depend heavily on emotional intelligence, and it turns out this matters exponentially more than most of us realize. There's legitimate research backing this up that's genuinely shocking. One study discovered that when measuring business achievement, raw cognitive ability only contributes roughly 10% to the final outcome. But emotional intelligence, that accounts for somewhere between 85 and 90% of success.
Let me frame that differently for you. Being academically gifted might give you a marginal advantage, but your capacity to read people, regulate your own emotional responses, and cultivate authentic connections is essentially everything. And here's what makes this fascinating. People with average intelligence frequently develop these capabilities out of sheer survival instinct because they can't coast on being the most brilliant person present. So what does emotional intelligence actually manifest as in day-to-day reality? It's possessing enough self-awareness to recognize when you're drowning and seeking guidance rather than faking expertise. It's maintaining composure when financial markets are collapsing and mass panic surrounds you. It's having the internal drive to continue investing and building even when immediate rewards are nowhere in sight. And it's cultivating the empathy to genuinely comprehend what your customers, clients, or collaborators actually require.
I used to believe networking was just corporate theater and superficial chit-chat, which made me want to disappear into the walls at every professional gathering. But I quickly discovered that no matter how much financial or investment knowledge I possessed, it was worthless if I couldn't forge meaningful connections and articulate those concepts effectively. Emotional intelligence is what opens doors to opportunities you didn't even know were available. It's encountering a future business partner during a spontaneous cafe conversation. It's securing a superior position because the hiring manager felt genuine rapport with you. It's persuading investors to back your vision because they believe in you as a human being, not merely your pitch deck. The most intellectually gifted individuals often struggle here because they assume their intelligence is self-evident. They believe if they just lay out the facts with perfect logic, everyone will naturally arrive at their conclusion. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. We make choices based on feelings first, then rationalize them with logic afterward. If you can't establish an emotional connection, your brilliant insights will go completely unheard. Fear of looking stupid. Our fourth reason cuts to the core of why intelligence can actually become a handicap. Smart people are absolutely petrified of appearing foolish, while average people have zero reputation to protect. Think about the psychology here. If you've carried the gifted or intelligent label your entire life, your whole sense of self becomes anchored to being smart. Failing at something or taking a gamble that doesn't pay off isn't just a financial setback, it feels like a definitive proof that you're not as exceptional as everyone believes. That terror of humiliation becomes absolutely crippling. You'll sidestep opportunities because what if people discover you don't have all the answers? What if your groundbreaking idea crashes and burns, exposing you as less than genius? This creates a self-imposed prison of perfectionism, where inaction feels safer than being proven wrong. Meanwhile, people who never received praise for their intellect growing up carry no such burden. Maybe they were recognized for being reliable, compassionate, or determined. Or perhaps they were even mocked for not being particularly sharp. But here's the beautiful paradox. Since their identity was never built on being intelligent, they have absolutely nothing to defend and everything to potentially gain. This is where what I call the "let them" mentality becomes incredibly liberating. Rather than obsessing over others' opinions, you simply allow them to think whatever they choose. Let them think your decision is idiotic. Let them mock your business concept. Let them question your investment approach. While you're busy letting them think whatever they want, you're free to actually chase the opportunities they're too concerned with appearances to even attempt. Remember the pet rock phenomenon from the 1970s? Gary Dahl conceived this concept almost as satire while venting about how demanding actual pets were. He figured it would be amusing to market rocks as pets, complete with care manuals and everything. Most people would have been too mortified to actually execute something so preposterous. But Dahl couldn't care less about appearing sophisticated or intellectually serious. He embraced the ridiculousness, promoted these rocks as genuine pets, and even included training guides.
What appeared to be the most absurd concept imaginable ended up selling over 1.5 million pet rocks in just half a year, making him a millionaire virtually overnight. Then there's Steve Gadlin, who launched a website called I Want to Draw a Cat for You. His entire business model consisted of sketching cats for people in whatever style they wanted and emailing them the drawings for $10 a piece. On the surface, this sounds utterly ludicrous. Who would actually pay some random internet person for hand-drawn cat illustrations? Well, approximately 19,000 people would, as it turns out. Over 3 years, Gadlin generated over $300,000 from his cat sketches and related products. His supposedly ridiculous concept even attracted Mark Cuban's attention, who invested in it on Shark Tank. The pattern becomes crystal clear once you notice it. While intelligent people worry about maintaining their sophisticated image, regular individuals are out there testing bizarre concepts and discovering what actually resonates in the marketplace. They're not paralyzed by the fear of appearing ridiculous because they never expected to look brilliant anyway.
Avoiding prestige traps. This connects directly to our fifth and final reason why ordinary individuals frequently outperform geniuses financially. They're not obsessed with status symbols, and that saves them absolutely massive amounts of money. Intelligent people have a weakness for prestigious things, elite universities, impressive-sounding job titles, luxury brands that broadcast their success, and sophistication. But here's the fundamental problem with chasing status. It drains your resources at an alarming rate and typically delivers abysmal returns on investment. Consider higher education as Exhibit A. Annual tuition at Ivy League institutions is now hovering around $70,000. Meanwhile, you can receive a perfectly solid education at a state university or community college for roughly $10,000 to $15,000 per year. That's a $50,000 to $60,000 annual gap that could be invested in markets, deployed to launch a business, or used as a down payment on real estate. Picture this scenario. You're 18 years old, deciding between Harvard and your local state university. The intelligent kid selects Harvard for the prestige and spends the next 4 years accumulating crushing debt for a credential that might not actually deliver superior career outcomes. The average kid chooses the state school, completes their degree with minimal financial burden, and channels that extra money into index funds or uses it to launch a modest business. Fast forward 20 years, who do you think is in superior financial condition? The Harvard graduate still servicing student loans, or the state school graduate who's been systematically building wealth since graduation? When you factor in compound growth and the opportunity cost of that debt, the mathematics isn't even remotely close. This exact pattern manifests everywhere you look. I know someone who abandoned college entirely to become a plumber. Not exactly the career trajectory that earns you invitations to upscale social gatherings, right? But while his engineering classmates were graduating buried under $60,000 in educational debt and competing viciously for entry-level positions that barely covered their monthly loan payments, he was already earning solid income and establishing a loyal customer base. 10 years later, this person owns 3 service vehicles, has several employees on payroll, and earns more in a single month than most of those engineers make annually. He's not concerned with impressing anyone with his professional title. He's too busy depositing substantial checks and booking his next international trip to care about others' perception of his occupation. The intelligent people, meanwhile, are still ascending the corporate hierarchy, hoping their next promotion will finally deliver the recognition and compensation they believe they've earned. They're playing an entirely different game, one where appearing important supersedes actually accumulating wealth. And this is the critical distinction. Average people concentrate on what actually produces results.
They select careers based on market demand and earning capacity, not on what sounds impressive at reunions. They purchase dependable pre-owned vehicles instead of luxury automobiles they can't realistically afford. They invest in unglamorous index funds rather than attempting to identify the next explosive stock that'll make them look like financial wizards. Smart people, conversely, often become imprisoned by their own elevated expectations. They feel entitled to drive a BMW because they attended a prestigious school. They believe they deserve an executive office because they hold an advanced degree. They're convinced their intelligence justifies a certain lifestyle regardless of whether their finances can actually sustain it. Here's what's truly remarkable about all of this. The characteristics that drive financial success aren't complex or enigmatic. You don't need an advanced degree to grasp them. Persistence, emotional intelligence, willingness to embrace risk, focusing on tangible outcomes over appearances. These are capabilities that literally anyone can cultivate. But here's the paradox. If you've spent your entire life being told you're intellectually gifted, developing these traits can actually prove more challenging. You might assume you don't need them because your brain power should be sufficient. Or you might be so afraid of appearing incompetent that you never allow yourself the opportunity to practice and grow. This is precisely why some of the most successful entrepreneurs I've encountered are individuals who struggled academically. They had to master interpersonal connection because they couldn't depend on being the sharpest mind present. They had to develop resilience because nothing came effortlessly. They had to embrace risk because playing it safe wasn't advancing them anywhere. And once they honed these capabilities, their supposed lack of intelligence became completely irrelevant. In fact, it transformed into an advantage because they weren't burdened by the expectations and anxieties that constrain supposedly superior minds. Now, I'm not suggesting intelligence is meaningless. Obviously, you need fundamental competence to succeed in most domains, but the research makes it abundantly clear. Once you reach that baseline threshold, other variables become dramatically more significant, and those variables have zero correlation with your standardized test performance or your college transcript.
The empowering truth here is that financial success is genuinely accessible to virtually everyone, regardless of where you land on the intelligence spectrum. You don't need to be born with exceptional cognitive abilities. You don't need to graduate from elite institutions or dazzle people with your intellectual prowess. You simply need to cultivate the right behaviors and mindset. Begin taking action rather than endlessly researching and strategizing. Prioritize relationship building and understanding human psychology, not just hoarding information. Don't fear looking foolish if it means gaining valuable experience. Select opportunities based on their actual potential returns, not on how impressive they'll sound at social gatherings. So there it is, the uncomfortable reality nobody wants to acknowledge. Being smart might actually be sabotaging your financial progress. While geniuses are occupied with overthinking and safeguarding their reputations, ordinary people are out there constructing wealth through sheer determination, decisive action, and fundamental interpersonal skills. Maybe it's time to embrace being average and start building real wealth.